While visiting my parents at Thanksgiving, my dad announced, "Honestly, he was never really our son, he more like a guest who overstayed his welcome." My sister whispered to my mom, "Why did you invite him? He stinks of poverty." They giggled and pointed at me. I stood up and said I was done and left. Their faces froze, but the real karma started for them a week later. It had been 3 years since I had last set foot in my parents' house. I didn't come round for birthdays, didn't send Christmas cards, didn't even call on Mother's Day. Every now and then I'd get a short, polite text from my mother asking how I was, followed by an emoji she clearly didn't know how to use. I never ignored her completely, but I always kept it short. There was just nothing left to talk about. I was working as a security guard at a shopping center outside Columbus, Ohio. The job wasn't impressive, and I didn't pretend it was. I checked doors, watched cameras, dealt with shoplifters, and walked the same halls 10 hours a day. It wasn't the kind of job you put on your family group chat. But I earned a living. I had my own apartment. I didn't ask anyone for anything. Then, about a week before Thanksgiving, I got a phone call. My mother, overly cheerful, asked if I'd consider coming home for the holidays. She used the word home, as if it still meant something. I asked her why. She said everyone would be there. She said that would mean a lot. She said Dad had mellowed. I didn't believe a word of it, but for some reason I heard myself say I was coming. Maybe I thought things had changed. Maybe I wanted them to have changed. The drive was long. 8 hours straight, barely stopping. I arrived the night before Thanksgiving. The house looked exactly the same. White siding, 2 shutters missing. Same porch swing I'd fixed once, still hanging on a chain. It felt like stepping into a memory I hadn't asked for. My dad opened the door. He didn't smile, he didn't hug me, he didn't say much. He just looked at me for a second, as if he didn't recognize me. Then he stepped aside to let me in. My mother came out of the kitchen, wiped her hands on a towel, and acted as if it hadn't been 3 years. She offered me leftovers as if I still lived there. Sarah was already on the sofa, scrolling through her phone as if I wasn't even there. She looked up just long enough to say, "Wow, I didn't think you'd actually show up. I could tell it was going to be a long 2 days. Thanksgiving morning was all noise and no heat. My mom was running around the kitchen barking instructions to no one. Sarah was on a Zoom call with someone from her wine club, talking loudly about her Tesla and some ski trip they were planning. Her husband didn't come. He said he had a thing. I thought he just didn't want to be there. I could understand. I offered to help set the table and was told, just don't get in the way. So I went for a walk instead. The dinner looked like a magazine spread. Everything was perfectly arranged. Candles, fancy plates, cloth napkins folded into birds. You'd think we were entertaining royalty. We sat down and for a while everyone pretended to be family. There was small talk, mostly between my mother and Sarah. I barely spoke. Every time I tried, someone would interrupt or look at their phone. And then, just as I was cutting into the turkey, my dad put down his fork. He didn't even look at me when he said it. To be honest, he was never really our son. More like a guest who abused his hospitality. There was silence for a second. My hand just froze on my plate. Then Sarah leaned over to my mother and whispered, "Why did you invite him? He reeks of poverty." They both laughed. As if it was an inside joke they'd been waiting to share. I didn't shout. I didn't ask for an explanation. I just stood up. I looked at them all, said 2 words, "I'm done," and walked out. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. I got in my car, drove out of the driveway and didn't look back. But a week later they would. When karma finally knocked, it knocked hard. And I was the only one left to answer. The drive back felt different. Not heavier, just quieter. As if something had finally ended. I got home late that night, kicked off my boots and didn't bother to unpack. Just collapsed on the sofa with the TV on mute, staring at nothing. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. No text to my colleagues. No update on Facebook. I just went back to work the next morning as if nothing had happened. A week went by. I settled into my usual routine. Early mornings, long shifts, the same rotating list of shoplifters trying the same tricks. Every now and then I'd think about what my dad had said, or the way Sarah laughed, but it stopped stinging after a few days. I'd been numb to it for years. This just made it official. Then one Tuesday afternoon, just after lunch, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. This time I answered. It was my mother. Her voice was tight, shaky in a way I'd never heard it before. She asked if I had a minute. I almost hung up. Then she said, "We need help." It turned out that my father had been fired from his job 2 days after Thanksgiving. Not sacked, fired. Something about misusing company funds, though she didn't go into detail. Sarah had just discovered that her husband had been lying about their finances for months. They were deeply in debt, apparently. The Tesla? Leased and months behind. Their house? About to be foreclosed on. It was all happening at once, and now they were calling me. I didn't say much. I just listened. My mum started to cry, something she never did, not even when I was a kid. She said they didn't know who else to turn to. She said I was the only one they could rely on. It must have felt good to hear that. Some kind of affirmation. But it didn't. It felt empty. Like someone asking for a favor after years of pretending you didn't exist. Still, I told her I'd think about it. That night I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my savings. I wasn't rich, but I had enough. I'd been careful. No children, no big expenses. I could help if I wanted to. And for some reason I did. Not for them. But maybe because I wanted to prove to myself that I was better than they treated me. That I hadn't become what they said I was. So I did it. I sent Sarah enough money to keep her house from being repossessed. I helped my dad cover the fines he was facing. I sent the money quietly, no drama, no strings attached. My mother called and thanked me. Sarah wrote, short and cold, as if it hurt her to do it at all. But it worked. Her fires were temporarily extinguished. And just like that, they were gone. No updates. No follow-ups. No check-ins. After a few weeks, it was as if I had never existed. Until I found out what they were doing with the money. And that's when things changed. That's when I stopped being nice. I found out about 6 weeks later. I didn't even think about her anymore. I told myself I didn't expect a thank you, but the silence was still in the back of my mind like a stone in my shoe. I'd help them because I thought maybe they'd wake up a little. See me differently. At least pretend I existed. But nothing. No calls, no messages. Just silence. Then one of the guys at work, Paul, who also did night shifts, came into the security office one night and held up his phone. "Dude, isn't that your sister?" I looked. It was an Instagram story. Sarah, posing with 2 cocktails in front of a palm tree. The caption, "Back on track. Reset needed. Life is good." I blinked. My chest tightened. I flicked through her stories. There were more. Fancy hotel rooms. A rented convertible. Spa treatments. Hashtags like healing vibes and good and urgently. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself maybe her husband had come through with some side business. But the next day I saw something different. A post from my mum. A Facebook album called New Beginnings. It was photos of her. Small but meaningful. Vow renewal ceremony. She and my dad on a beach somewhere. Matching outfits. Hired photographer. Bouquets. Guests. Guests. They used the money for a holiday. For a vow renewal. For spa days and cocktails and Instagram clout. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to make sense of it all. They'd called me in tears. Begged for help. Told me they were on the brink. And as soon as the smoke cleared, they took my money and treated themselves. And not once did they consider that maybe I deserved to know. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table again, but this time with a notepad. I didn't think about revenge at first. I just needed to process. But the more I wrote down, the more it shifted. I wrote down every single thing they'd ever done to make me feel small. Every insult. Every slight. Every time they used me and then discarded me like I was disposable. It started as a list. Then a plan. A quiet, patient plan. The first step, I contacted Sarah's leasing company. Technically, her house hadn't been saved, just delayed. One missed payment, and it would all fall apart again. She thought I'd fixed it. She had no idea the loan was still unstable. Step 2, my dad's job problems weren't over. The company that fired him had filed a formal complaint with the board that oversaw his professional license. They hadn't made it public yet, but I knew someone who worked in that office. I made a few calls. It wasn't illegal. I didn't lie. I just reminded people of what they already had on him. Gave them a little nudge. And while that was going on, I started documenting everything. Not just what they did with the money, but what they posted, what they said, what they told their friends. I didn't want to just burn the bridge. I wanted to make sure they were on it when it went down. But that was just the beginning. The next step would change everything. I waited. It wasn't about rushing. If I had done something drastic right away, it would have been obvious. And frankly, I didn't want them to know it was me. Not yet. The thing about Sarah is that she has this compulsive need to post everything. She thinks she's being subtle with her captions and filters, but you can practically chart her financial situation through her Instagram feed. So when I saw her post a picture of her dog with the caption, "Just got back from our weekend in Aspen," I smiled. Aspen. She was still convinced I had it all figured out. Still spending. Still flaunting. Still clueless. I knew she rented her home through a third-party management company, so I started sending anonymous tips through their complaints system, photos of violations I'd pulled from her own social media. Her dog wasn't supposed to be off-leash in the common areas. Her husband had built a home gym in the garage that violated several safety codes. I even pointed out that the cars parked in the driveway were registered under different names. That triggered a full review of the lease. 3 weeks later, she posted a quote. "Sometimes life forces you to reset, even when you're not ready." The backdrop was just a blank wall. Her furniture was gone. The comments were turned off. My father was next. The board overseeing his certification moved slowly, but once they started sniffing around, they didn't stop. I knew that. I'd worked mall security long enough to see what happened to petty officers who thought they were untouchable. He still hadn't found a job after the first firing, but he'd planned to consult something low-key that wouldn't raise any flags. The board's investigation made that impossible. A few days later, my mother posted one of those cryptic, "God gives the hardest battles to his strongest soldiers" quotes on Facebook. I saved it. Then I got creative. I started a blog. Nothing dramatic. Just a little WordPress site, anonymous author, no pictures. It looked like a generic story-sharing platform. And I wrote the whole story. My side. The insults at Thanksgiving. The fake tears. He reeks of poverty. Lying. The money I gave. The beach trip. The vow renewal. Everything. I left out the names, but the details were sharp enough for anyone in the area to connect the dots. Then I shared it in a community Facebook group where my mom was a member. It didn't go viral, but it spread. People started talking. I watched as comments started popping up under her old posts. Things like, "Is this what you meant by new beginnings?" And, "Must be nice to vacation on someone else's dime." She deleted the vow renewal album. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd reach out. Call me. Try to explain. Maybe even apologize. But they didn't. Instead, they blocked me. All of them. One by one. They thought I was done. They didn't know I was just getting started. It was strangely quiet for a few weeks. No posts, no cryptic quotes, no fake humble brags. Their accounts either went private or were deleted. I figured the blog must have upset them more than I thought. I didn't update it. I let it sit there, quietly attracting attention. I wasn't done with them, but I wanted them to stew in silence for a while. Then a strange thing happened. One morning I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper that just said, "Thought you should know. Sarah is applying for a loan in your name." No explanation. No signature. Just that. At first I thought it was a joke. But something about it made me sick to my stomach. I logged into Credit Karma, something I barely check more than once a year. And there it was, a request from a lender I'd never heard of. A loan application under my full name and social security number. Submitted 3 days ago. I reported it immediately. Froze my credit. Filed the fraud report. But more than that, I knew. I knew it was her. I had never given her my social security number. But years ago, when I was working a part-time job and still sleeping on couches, she had helped me fill out a health insurance application at our parents' house. I remember her writing down some things and making a copy of my ID. She kept it. For years. And now, when she was drowning in debt and Instagram couldn't save her, she figured I wouldn't notice. That changed everything. I dropped everything else I was doing and focused on this. I called the fraud department, gave them all the information I had, and made sure they knew it was a relative. I had to be careful. I didn't want to press charges right away. I wanted her to know I knew first. So I sent her a copy of the fraud alert, anonymously. No note. No threats. Just the paper and a red circle around her credit application. 2 days later she called me. Blocked number. I picked up. She didn't say hello. She just asked, "Did you tell the bank?" I didn't answer. I let the silence drag on. She started to cry. Said she didn't mean to. Said it was a mistake. Said she was just trying to survive. Her voice broke as she said, "I didn't think you'd notice." That was different. Not that she was sorry. That she didn't think I'd notice. That's how they always saw me. Invisible. Disposable. A walking resource. So I told her this. "I'm giving you 1 week to fix this. If this loan doesn't go away, if it even touches my record again, I'm going to press charges. And this time you won't be able to hide it with some filtered quote about resilience." She hung up. A few days later, the request was marked as denied. But I wasn't done. Because while I was dealing with that, something else slipped through. My mother. She quietly applied for emergency assistance using my name as a caretaker, claiming she was being supported by me because of my employment in law enforcement. That line, law enforcement, killed me. She made up a whole story. My job as a mall security guard somehow became her law enforcement son. She attached a fake letter using an old badge number from when I briefly trained as a transit security guard in my 20s. She was trying to get rental assistance. She'd submitted the paperwork 6 weeks ago. This time, I didn't issue a warning. I reported the fraud. And a week later, I got a voicemail from her. She was sobbing. She said the investigation had ruined everything. That she was being treated like a criminal. That I didn't understand what family was. And then she said something that stayed with me. "We were just trying to get back to where we were." That's when I realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry for getting caught. Sorry for losing access to me. But not sorry for the way they treated me. And now they were about to lose even more. Because what they didn't know was that I had something else. Something I hadn't used yet. Something they really didn't see coming. By now they'd lost a lot. Sarah had quietly moved to a smaller rental outside of town. Her credit was shot, and she'd started doing freelance social media consulting, which was basically just selling recycled Pinterest quotes to local boutiques. My dad's license had been suspended pending an investigation, and any chance of consulting was dead in the water. My mom stopped posting altogether. I'd won, if you can call it that. But it wasn't enough. Not because I wanted her ruined. I just wanted her honest. Just once, I wanted her to look me in the eye without distorting the truth, without pretending. I wanted them to feel the weight of every laugh they had at my expense, every dismissive word, every time they called me less. So I played my last card. Years ago, when my dad first got his job as a regional operations manager for a logistics company, he had a little HR scandal that was quietly swept under the rug. Nothing criminal, just a serious policy violation that went away after someone in upper management got involved. I'd overheard it at a family gathering, back when I was still invited to them. At the time, I didn't care. But after the scam? After they used my name, stole my credit, and tried to erase me again? I remembered. I did some digging. Found a former employee who had been fired that same month. She didn't hold back. She sent me emails, internal reports, even a copy of a complaint that had been dismissed but never deleted. I put it all together, every questionable document, every email, every ignored report. Then I sent it to his current licensing board. Not anonymously. With my full name. 3 days later, he was permanently disbarred. The board stripped him of everything. Pension, retirement status, future renewals. Gone. And just to be clear, I didn't send it to hurt him. I sent it because it was true. Sarah was next. I sent a detailed file to every boutique she worked with, showing the false credentials she was using. She'd claimed degrees she didn't have, faked case studies, even sold advertising packages under a fake LLC. A few quietly dropped her. One even posted a story saying they were cutting ties with unverified advisors. Her online presence collapsed. She deleted everything. And my mom? Well, she called me one last time. It was brief. You ruined us, she said. I didn't even argue. I just said, you did it yourself. I just stopped protecting you. That was months ago. They haven't reached out since. No one has. And honestly, it's been the most peaceful period of my life. They always saw me as the weak one, the loser, the mall cop. But when it all fell apart, I was the one they came to. And when they tried to cut me out again, I reminded them who I really was. I don't regret helping them. But I'll never forget how quickly they went back to pretending I didn't matter. And now they can live in that silence. Just like I did for years. The update 1. I thought I was done. I really thought I'd closed the chapter. I had cut them out completely, deleted numbers, blocked them on everything. For the first time in my life I wasn't tied to her drama. I could breathe. No late night calls, no fake emergencies, no guilt. Just peace. But the thing about peace is that it gives you clarity. And in that silence, I began to remember things. Conversations from years ago, little humiliations I'd buried deep. Times I'd helped them and gotten nothing but ridicule in return. And one night, it all boiled up again. This wasn't about money. Or even respect. This was about truth. You see, after all I'd uncovered Sarah's fake career, my father's past misdeeds, the attempted fraud, there were still people who thought I'd gone too far. Mutual friends. Some extended family. They had no idea what had really happened. All they saw was the aftermath, the collapse. And my family? They let those people think I'd turned on them out of nowhere. So I decided my last move wasn't revenge. It was storytelling. I took everything I'd documented, texts, bank statements, social media posts, the fraud reports, and wrote a full account. I didn't hold back. I named names. I included screenshots. I laid it all out in a brutally honest blog under my own name, with one rule: no exaggeration. Just the truth. Then I submitted it to a mid-sized online publication that covers real-life stories, anonymous tips, reader submissions, personal experiences. They got back to me. Said it was one of the craziest stories they'd ever read. Asked to verify some of the details. I gave them everything. 2 weeks later it was published. It didn't blow up, but it got traction. People shared it. Commented. Tagged friends. Dozens of messages came in, some from strangers, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some even apologized for believing my family's version. But what really set things off was what happened next. One of Sarah's old business clients shared the article publicly with the headline, "I wish I'd known this before I worked with her." From there, she caught fire in the very community she was trying to re-enter under a new name. Every door she tried to sneak back through slammed shut. Her online presence never recovered. My dad, he tried threatening a lawsuit. Said the story was libelous. The publication sent back a quick email reminding him that everything had been checked, verified, and documented. He went quiet after that. My mother, she didn't say a word. Not one. But last week I saw someone post a photo of her at a community food bank. Not volunteering. Standing in line. And no, I don't feel guilty. Because here's the part one haven't told anyone. I didn't write this story for them. I wrote it for people like me. People who get fired because their jobs aren't fancy. Who sit quietly while their families treat them like background noise. Who are used and forgotten, then blamed when they finally stand up. This story wasn't about revenge. It was freedom. And it worked. But there's one more part. One they'll never expect. Final update. It happened on a Thursday, just as I was leaving work. One of the mall's vendors had spilled soda on the security monitor, and I'd just finished cleaning up the mess. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally I would have let it go, but something made me answer it. The voice on the other end was shaky, familiar but not from my immediate family. It was my cousin Brian. We hadn't spoken in years. He was my dad's brother's kid, lived 2 states away, and used to come to the family barbecues when we were younger. Quiet guy. Always watching from the sidelines. Said he read the article. Said he found it through a friend who didn't even know we were related. Then he said this. "I have to tell you something about your sister. Something I've been holding on to for a long time." I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. Apparently, 3 years ago, Sarah had approached him about a business opportunity. She asked him to invest in her. Wellness coaching startup. She sent him mock-ups, client testimonials, which I now know were fake, and financial projections. She told him she had lined up a partnership with a popular influencer, and if he got in early, he could double his investment in 6 months. He sent her $15,000. Then nothing. Excuses. Delays. Ghosted. He tried to get it back. She told him it was tied up in marketing and under legal review. Eventually, she blocked him, too. He never told anyone because, in his words, I thought maybe she'd gone through a rough patch and would pull through. He didn't want to cause a family drama. But now, after reading the full story, he realized that she never had any intention of paying him back. And he wasn't the only one. He mentioned 2 others. Friends of friends. People Sarah had pitched. Investment opportunities. To same story, same silence. This wasn't just manipulation. It was a pattern. She wasn't just lying to get money. She was building a system around it. Brian said he didn't want revenge. He just wanted to get the truth out. So I told him I had an idea. And yes, it's already in motion. Sarah doesn't know yet. But she's about to meet every single person she betrayed, in the same place, at the same time. And I'll be there too.